Hi everyone. I wanted to tell you about this book, Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. I'm gonna just talk about the first 30 pages, the first part of the book. I've read it and now I'm rereading it and kind of breaking it down even more. I hope to host a book club for anyone in Wausau, Wisconsin who wants to come to that. It'll be mid-September, so contact me if you want more information on the book club, because I would love to have anyone join the discussion. So if you're going to read it, don't listen to this or watch this, because I'm going to talk about the first 30 pages. All right. So in the first part, we learn about the narrator. The narrator sees this post in the newspaper that says, "Teacher seeks pupil, must have an earnest desire to save the world. Apply in person." So, of course, this is what caught my eye to read the book, because it was on the back cover. But that is, the narrator sees this and is mad about it, so upset, because the narrator has always wanted to do that and to find a teacher, and has been heartbroken time after time after time. And like right away, boom, first chapter, first couple pages, I am like, wow, this narrator is me. I have had these exact same feelings and have been pushed down and said, no, that's impossible, find a different way. I started in college going for environmental education, and then I was like, wow, that's too big. Maybe I'll help people and do family life education. So I've been discouraged too. And so the narrative talks about trying to align their chakras and to hug your neighbor and love your neighbor. And I think those are great things, and I'm really learning about those things too. But in this book, he's saying that that's helping the person. It's not helping the whole world. And of course, if we spread that knowledge and if everyone does, maybe. Who knows? But anyway, they're jumping to that's not what this book is about. So he decides to go find out who this teacher is. And the narrator thinks that they're just going to be a charlatan and that he's not going to get anything out of it. And obviously there's a book. So he learns something. He goes into an office building, normal looking office building. He describes that. He describes a bookshelf and a chair and kind of a wall of glass. And when he finally takes the time to look into there, he catches the eyes of a gorilla. And it startles him because he's not expecting that, but he can smell it. So he does describe that smell too. And so then he sees behind the gorilla, there's a sign saying, with man gone, will there be hope for gorilla? And right away he's upset because it doesn't make sense and it's inexplainable. So he's upset, and then he's upset that there's this gorilla here just proving this point that doesn't have a point. And so he decides the teacher is not here. I'm going to find a pen and paper. I'm going to write them a note. I want to make this trip worth something. So he's looking around, upset, and he thinks, I should sit down. And then he thinks, would it be best if I sat down? And then this thought came into his head saying, if you sit, you are better able to hear. And that freaked him out. What was that, his own thought? Where was this coming from? And he catches eyes with the gorilla, and he realizes that it's telepathic communication. Now, I think that's amazing. I think it's super interesting. I don't think we know enough about this. It's something I'm interested in looking into. But anyway, so for this book's purpose, the gorilla can speak, and it's telepathic. So the gorilla explains that he's the teacher. The gorilla is the teacher. And it takes a minute for the narrator to pull it all together and finally asks, what is your story? And so there's a couple chapters of the gorilla talking. And the gorilla explains being captured from Africa and living in the zoo, and how the zoo, how the gorilla family is like a hand. And at the zoo, it's like 5 severed fingers. They're not of the same family. They don't speak the same language, maybe. I'm not sure. But he explains that they're not companions as home would be. Then the Great Depression happens and a lot of zoos close down, and he gets sold to a circus. And I had the hardest time with this word, and of course I'm stumbling on it now. I'm going to say it wrong, but I know how to say it, so I'm trying to pull it back up out of my brain. It's spelled with a G, and I think it should be a J. At the... Menagerie, sorry. Oh my gosh. Alright, I'm saving it. It's gonna be fine. You guys work with me on this. It is the menagerie. So the menagerie, but for some reason my brain cannot do that word. Okay, so he gets sold to the menagerie. And when he is there, he is the only gorilla. And it describes it kind of like, I think they're like train cars. So he has his own train car. At the menagerie, I can say it if I'm not looking at it. So sorry about that stumble, everyone. So he discovers that the people that come to the menagerie talk to him, which they didn't do that at the zoo. And so he's kind of starting to form these thoughts, okay? And it's fascinating to me how the writer writes it. So anyway, I'm enjoying the book. He forms these thoughts, and he realizes that they're calling him Goliath, the people who are visiting. And he realizes that the next car over, the chimpanzee, they call her Zaza. And he talks about how the big cats pace, and that they're maybe more thoughtful than their wild counterparts, because in the wild, you don't have to think, you just live. And so he's saying these big cats are pacing, and they're saying, why? They can't get past it. They don't know why. They can't think that deeply, but the gorilla could. So he kind of explains that. And he talks about how feeding is different in the zoo versus in the wild. And he talks about, I want to find this line because it's just so good. So, the feeding times in Africa, food was just there, not a distinct activity at all, but rather a delicious music that played in the background of all activities. And I just think that is such a cool line, and it makes me think of babies feeding all the time, and kids snacking throughout the day, and people on diets are like, oh, small meals throughout the day. Maybe 3 meals a day isn't what we should be doing, and so I like this book because it makes you think of those sorts of things. I don't know. So he learns that his name is Goliath from the people who come to the menagerie. And then one day, this depressed man comes in out of the rain, soaking wet. He looks old, and all he says is, "You are not Goliath," and turns and walks away. And this just makes the gorilla so depressed. He was so happy to be someone and have a name, and then to have this person come in and say, "You are not Goliath." And it wasn't, your name is not Goliath, but you are. And that's an important thing too I've been learning about, like, really the importance of words. And when I'm talking with my kids, telling them that they are good cleaners, instead of saying, "Thanks for cleaning up," but I want to put that into who they are. You are a good cleaner, thank you. Versus, just wipe that up, thank you. But putting it into who they are. So the fact that this person said, "You are not Goliath," made Goliath extremely depressed. He didn't know what to make of that. So then he eats some food, and he has been sedated and wakes up in a different cage, in an outdoor gazebo. It sounds like it looked pretty nice. And he finds out that it was the man who told him he was not Goliath had bought him, and his name was Walter Sokolow, and he had went to see the gorilla in a depression after learning that his whole family had been lost to the Holocaust. And the advertisement for the gorilla looked like, the horrible Nazi Holocaust. And he was like, oh, I want to look into the eye of this evil and feel good about this evil being caged. And he realizes that no, this gorilla is not evil. He is living an unjust life, and so because he couldn't save his family, he decides to save the gorilla. And Mr. Sokolow changes his name to Ishmael, and it wasn't until after the book that I truly got what the name is, if you look up where it comes from in the Bible. So Mr. Sokolow tries to teach Ishmael how to speak, but physically a gorilla cannot form words. So out of desperation, one day Ishmael just cries out mentally, and the telecommunication begins. And they become great friends. And eventually Mr. Sokolow does marry and has a kid, and he's excited to share his kid with Ishmael, and Ishmael teaches his daughter, and it's very emotional for Ishmael. But Mrs. Sokolow does not like this and wants to get rid of him. So when Mr. Sokolow dies, the daughter is in control of him, and Ishmael wanted to be a teacher, and so that is kind of where we are. Ishmael is now in this room seeking pupils. We learn that he has had 4 other students and that they've all failed. And the subject that Ishmael teaches is captivity. And Ishmael asks the narrator why they're there. And the narrator says he feels like there's something we as society is being lied to about. And that is the end of part 1. And I hope it interests you enough that you want to read it. I hope that you come back and look for the other parts that I'm going to be filming as I go back through and comb through it. And if you're in the Wausau area, I hope you come to the book club discussion. Anyway, all right. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.